To be honest guys, I could have made this video 3 weeks ago. But some things were difficult for me to explain. Some settings are either contradictory or do not work as they do in real life. However, I will try to explain the effect of each setting using real examples. But before that, I will divide the settings into 3 categories. Most of the settings are closely interrelated and cannot work one at a time, so explaining them together will make much more sense. And of course, I will start with the third, most difficult category. The most important thing is to understand this category, and all the others will seem as clear as possible. Differential is literally an adjustment of the speed difference between the drive wheels. I will only explain power angle and coast angle. The rest of the settings are simply useless and have no positive effect on the car. Power angle is the difference in wheel speed as a percentage. That is, using 45 degrees, the maximum difference in wheel speed is 45%. Since I'm turning left and the S15 is rear-wheel drive, that means the left rear wheel spins slower than the right rear wheel. The right rear wheel rotates faster because it needs to cover a greater distance than the left one. And since the car turns to the left, this conditionally means that the left side is the inside and the right is the outside, which means that the inside wheel rotates slower than the outside. And if the car turned right, it would mean that the right side is inside and the left side is outside. Using zero power angle will make the power delivered to both wheels the same regardless of the situation, and we will have a so-called locked differential. This will be useful for drifting for low power cars, and in racing, zero power angle will make the car less stable and worse handling. A 90 power angle will worsen the handling and responsiveness of the car. Since the inner wheel will rotate only 10% of the total power, it will not be able to provide the necessary push forward. All control of the car will be carried out by only one outside wheel. Using a 20 power angle will provide good acceleration in high-speed corners and optimize handling in such corners. This angle is ideal for the Monaco circuit. 50-70 power angle is suitable for tracks with a lot of slow corners, such as Tsukuba circuit. 30-60 is the golden mean for everything, also great for the Nürburgring. But you should know that the approach to settings should be individual for each car. Coast angle determines how much the car will lose speed in a turn when coasting, that is, without using the gas pedal. Using zero angle in a turn, the car will lose speed as slowly as possible when coasting. But if you use a 90 angle, it may cause instability. In any case, this setting has no effect on the braking distance using the brake pedal. Let me remind you that this setting changes the coasting braking speed only when the car is turning. On straight sections, it does nothing. Final drive is 2 gears. One is the drive gear, which is directly connected to the engine through the drive shaft, and the other is driven, as it is rotated by the drive gear connected to the drive shaft. These gears have different sizes and different numbers of teeth on them, and if you count them relative to each other, we get the gear ratio. Simply put, the lower the number, the higher the maximum transfer speed. The higher the number, the lower the maximum transfer speed. Brake balance is the distribution of braking force along the axis. 70 means that 70% of the total braking power is on the front wheels and 30% at the rear. This balance is great for cars with soft suspension because when braking, all the mass is directed by inertia to the front axle, so there is no point in using strong brakes on the rear axle. And as you can see, excessive load on the front axle can cause the front wheels to lock, but if we used a balance of about 50, then the rear wheels would lock faster due to the high braking force and low pressure on the wheels. Such strong front brakes make the car more stable, but worsen handling due to excessive wheel load. Setting up the brakes for all cars is an individual task, but we can summarize that for a car with a soft suspension, a brake balance of 60-70 is suitable. For sports cars with a hard suspension, 50-60. For drift cars, you can use 15-30. Strong rear brakes can replace the handbrake and help regulate the skid angle. Max angle, TOA, Ackerman, camber and offset are all wheel geometry. These settings change the angles and position of the wheels in certain situations. Toe is the toe-in of the wheels. Positive toe-in points the front of the wheels forward, while negative toe-in moves them further apart. Positive toe increases stability at the cost of handling, negative toe improves handling at the cost of agility and stability. This means that if your car is stable enough, you can use about 0.40, 0.70 negative toe. But if the car is unstable, then it would be appropriate to use a positive toe of about 0.40, 1.10. True, both types of toe will completely ruin handling if, in addition to this, you do not use the Ackerman angle. Ackerman angle adjusts the angle of the inside wheel when turning. Positive Ackerman increases the angle of the inner wheel, which makes it appear at a greater angle compared to the outer wheel. Negative Ackerman worsens the angle of the inner wheel, which is why the outer wheel has a larger steering angle relative to the inner one. As you already understand, Pro Ackerman is a mirror of Anti-Ackerman. Anti-Ackerman reduces the angle of the inner wheel, which is why it works like a differential, because the outer wheel needs a larger angle to turn. Anti-Ackerman improves handling and eliminates oversteering, causing the car to turn smoothly and linearly. Pro Ackerman increases the angle of the inner wheel, making the car sharper and more maneuverable, thereby restoring the previous handling due to the change in toe. Most racing series use Anti-Ackerman as it ensures smooth control, because racing cars have a minimum or complete absence of any stability system. To summarize, we can say that 0.2 Anti-Ackerman and 0.2 Pro Ackerman may be suitable for most cars, but I repeat that each car should have an individual approach to setting. I don't know why the developer added the ability to adjust positive camber. But in reality, almost all street and all racing cars use negative camber. Since the wheels are wider, the contact patch with the asphalt is much larger, and since negative camber looks not at the car, but at the asphalt, it helps combat lateral loads when cornering. Due to negative camber, grip when cornering is significantly higher. If you use too much negative camber angle, the contact patch of the wheels will be round. Therefore, the difference in the direction of the wheels on the grip patch will be minimal when the wheels are facing straight and when the car is turning. I would suggest using an all-wheel angle of approximately 1.50 or 2.60, but giving the front wheels a little more camber to ensure even traction across all wheels. But do not forget that the greater the camber, the less maneuverable the car will be. And again, the camber must be selected individually for each car. There's not much to say about offset. When using a small negative offset, the car will become more maneuverable but less stable. Due to the fact that the wheels are literally inside the car, the body will roll strongly at every turn. When using a small positive offset, the maximum lateral load will become higher, the grip will also become slightly higher, but maneuverability will deteriorate greatly. The last category, suspension. Spring rate is the stiffness of the springs. The lower its value, the easier it will be to fully compress and expand the suspension. Damper is a shock absorber. It limits the maximum compression and expansion of the springs. The higher the damper number, the more effort will have to be made to fully compress and expand the suspension. In general, if you use the stiffest springs and dampers, the suspension will absorb a minimum amount of road irregularities. But at the same time, the likelihood of full compression of the suspension becomes lower, and as you know, full compression is very bad, the car may lose stability. For example, all racing cars and supercars use rigid suspension. Front-rear anchors is the ground clearance height. The lower the ground clearance, the closer the car's weight is to the asphalt, which means that stability will be higher since it will be more difficult to rock the car until it loses stability. Also, the lower the ground clearance, the less air circulation will occur under the car, which means the lifting force will be lower, the downforce will not change, but will become more efficient. Anti-rolls is a setting for freewheel play independently of each other. If you make 1.0, then both wheels on the same axle will have the same play. That is, they will be roughly constrained and will not be able to handle bumps separately. But if you do 0, you will get a completely independent suspension. The wheels will fully absorb all the bumps, but in high-speed turns, the inner wheels will greatly lose traction because the body will roll strongly. To configure, you need to understand what you want to achieve from your car. If your car is quite stable and you want to give it sharp handling and maneuverability, use approximately 0.3 in the front and 0.6 in the rear. But if you want responsive handling and high stability in any situation, such as the Nürburgring, then you will have to use about 0.7 front and 0.4 rear. But again, guys, these values are approximate, and I came up with them purely as an example. The settings should be selected individually for different cars, because all cars have different suspension, center of gravity, engine position, etc. For example, Ferrari 488 GT3 in Assetto Corsa has anti-rolls 3/7, Pagani Zonda are 12/4. The higher the front anti-rolls, the better the grip of the front wheels. The lower the anti-rolls of the rear wheels, the better they will handle bumps and vice versa. The most important thing is not to use minimum or maximum values, they do no good. I hope that I managed to explain clearly and you understood everything, because I have prepared two setups for you. The first for GT3 exclusively for the Nürburgring. When tuning it, I focused on maneuverability, speed of medium-speed corners, comfort when exiting corners, and predictable behavior in any situation. And this is a drift setup for a Mustang. I also recommend turning off ABS so that you can use the brake to adjust the drift angle. When setting it up, I focused only on the simplicity of drifting. I hope this video helped you understand tuning. But don't forget that for different purposes and for different cars, you need an individual approach to settings.